Hey everyone, it's Jen again. We're at the end of another week of Otomejam. This past week, week number 6, has been really just refining GUI on Echoberry's end and more writing on my end. So I have just kind of been writing up a storm. I am at, I guess, almost 62,000 words for the dialogue blocks. A lot of this is because of all the variant dialogue, so I feel like the length of the game doesn't really feel nearly as long as if it was like a kinetic or more linear visual novel. But since there's so much variant dialogue and possibly you could go through the game without even seeing half of it, it's gonna feel a lot shorter than what this 60,000 words would imply. And I still have some conversations left to do, as well as some endings to do. Well, pretty much all the endings. What am I talking about? So I'm guesstimating that I probably still have maybe close to 20,000 words left to write. So that is what my upcoming week is going to be like. I did say that I wanted to try to give some, I guess, like tips or have some conversations around visual novel development in each one of these videos. So I thought today I would talk a little bit about making manageable player choice consequences. I personally like to have a lot of player interaction in my games. I'd like to have a lot of those kind of choice menu dialogue. And I don't like to make each consequence, like each choice, I don't like to railroad the player into answering a certain way, or else they're automatically put on a certain route. So what I mean by that is, like, there are some visual novels with like branching paths where you might choose, I go to the right or I go to the left, and going to the right takes you to the cave, which takes you to the dungeon, which takes you to, you know, a certain end. Going to the left takes you to the garden, which takes you to, you know, the castle, which takes you to a completely different end. So making that one decision to go right or left pretty much tells two completely different stories. This is definitely a way to make visual novels, but I find personally, from a writing standpoint and from a player standpoint, that it's not my preference, because I don't like having one decision or just a handful of decisions lock me into a certain ending. Especially if it's the difference between like a good ending or a bad ending, because I feel like at that point I'm not really making player choices. I'm following a script, and then I get punished if I don't follow the script the way I'm supposed to, and then I have to look up like player guides and stuff in order to make sure that I don't make the wrong choices, and it becomes more like taking a test than it does like experiencing a story where my actions affect things around me. I know from a programming and writing standpoint that making every choice have direct consequences in this way is a very laborious method, because you're basically doubling your workload every time you give the player a choice. And this exponentially like spirals out of control if you're giving your player like a lot of choices. So then the other options that are left with us is that, do we give the player a bunch of flavor text where we ask them questions and then they answer, and then they have like just a little mini self-contained scene where that answer that they supply has some context within, you know, maybe like a few dialogue trees, and then everything kind of comes back to a main more linear story pathway. So when you choose right or left, you stumble, when you go right, you stumble across a bird and you help it, and then you go back to the main path. Or you go to the left and you find, I don't know, some water and you have a refreshing drink, and then you go back to the path. And neither one of those choices affects the ending, because you still go back to that main pathway that still takes you to the same end, regardless if you save the bird or drink some water. So what I like to do in my games is try to find like a middle ground where I have a lot of, as you can see, menu choices, dialogue, where we use variables to award the player some type of points to kind of like do conditional checks. So like if I go and make these decisions, maybe one would give me a compassion point, or one would give me like some other type of variable that I could say, okay, by the end of the game you made like 20 compassionate choices, and so you get that kind of empathy ending. As opposed to like maybe you went through the game and you did some other things, that added up to this other ending. So that way the player's choices still have like some immediate consequence that kind of diverges the dialogue a little bit to show the world reacting to what they're doing. Go back to a main pathway so that you're not making all your choices go spiral out of control as far as like exponentially increasing your writing load every choice. And then at the end you evaluate the sum of all their choices to make the sum of their choices have an impact. That is how I like to structure my games lately, and this game is really no exception. But there are some like, I guess, extra little things that I had to worry about because of its heavy emphasis on the dating simulator and whether or not the player would make choices that aligned with the dating option. So there are those different dating activities of having dialogue with them, gifting them, dressing them up, chatting with them, that sort of thing. There's also the room decor, where if you have the room decorated with the item that the character is interested in, then you can unlock an extra conversation every like kind of bond level milestone, as well as gain kind of like a passive bonus every time you summon them. So that's a good way to build affection. Oops, I don't know how I opened that. So the other thing let me back up a step. So it creates kind of some interesting problems with meeting you back at that kind of more linear pathway of the character and relationship development. So I wanted the player to have the freedom to like make these choices and not feel like you have to give the correct gift every single time you meet up with the character, or else you cannot get the good ending, because then are you really giving the player a choice if everything you can choose to give them is bad unless you give them the right answer choice. Like, that's not the type of experience that I want the player to have. I want them to be able to explore all the different items that you can give them and interact with them. We programmed all these, so I don't want to dissuade them from doing those actions. So basically, when you summon the character, you can earn anywhere from, let me go to their stat screen. This is a new game, so all this is empty. But there's a couple different things that we're tracking in this game. So there's the affection points, which are the direct rewards for interacting with them. And those points vary from like having 1 point for like just giving them anything to like 5 points to giving them their favorite thing, petting them. There are some pet options that they don't like at all and will reward you no points. And then interactions that they like, which would award them again up to like 5 points. So you could go through a summoning session with one of the characters and earn anywhere from like 1 being like, I made all the worst possible choices and I didn't give them anything, and made it as short and as like, I guess, non-interactive as possible, to having up to 20 points, which is a huge variance. So how am I going to deal with evaluating the player's choices without forcing them into or penalizing them for not giving the correct answers? So the way that we decided to offset, well, I guess I should say because I very much made this executive decision. The way that I decided to evaluate the players' choices and make their choices have some impact, but not penalize them too hard for not following the exact correct answers or most optimal gameplay, is that we have the summoning cost for summoning the character. So when you are playing the gacha, you have to collect these items to summon the character, and every time you summon them, it costs more summon stones. So the first time you summon them, it only costs 1 stone. The second time it costs 2 stones, etc. It is possible to complete the character's route with 10 summons, which we're looking at about, I don't remember the exact math, but maybe around 100 soul stones in order to complete a character's route and get their happy ending. You can do this in 10 calendar days. The player has up to 30 days really to reach one of the endings, and they will have to, there's kind of like a time gate where they need a special item that doesn't unlock until the halfway point around day 17. You have to wait on that item. But you can have your love interest, if you maximized all of your interactions, you could have them ready, to with their required stats, with their required affection points and required bond levels. You could have them ready by probably like day 10 if you just like pursued one character, and then you could use those next like 7 days to just give them a bunch of stuff they don't like, and they could be like, haha, you're funny. Because their reactions to you doing things they don't normally care for softens as they increase in bond level. So like, let's say you were to pet one of them in a place that they don't really like, at bond level like 0 or 1, then they're going to be pretty like, don't do that, and they're not going to give you any affection points for it. But by the time they reach bond level 6 or like 5 or 6, then those interactions, and they just like interacting with you, and so they're like, yeah, that's cool. And that's kind of why we evaluate their bond level and we evaluate their affection points. Now, why do I have the affection points separate from the bond level? Bond levels are gated by the number of summons. So you can only gain 1 bond level per summon maximum. The required affection points increase per level up. So you could theoretically get enough affection points in 1 summon if you min-maxed everything to get the 2 bond levels in 1 summoning session, but you can only increase by like 1 bond level. So it's another way of kind of like tempering down the possible ramifications of getting up to 20 points. Now, for maximizing your affection gain with your date, there is some reward for doing this, because again, if you maximize your affection gain, they will gain bond levels faster, they will unlock their story route faster, and you will have to do less summons, which means you'll have to play less of the little gacha game, the little ad clicker mini game. You won't have to do that as much. You'll have more days left in the calendar to explore the other possible love interests. I don't know why I clicked that. That was an accident. Okay. I was thinking of the calendar. You'll have more days left over to just interact with them. You will have more, I guess, like space to explore all the different goofy things you can do with them, as well as possibly see more of their variable dialogue, because there is a lot of like dialogue that is optional. So in all of these interactions with the conversations, let's use that as an example, you have the main progression path that is based on their bond level, and how. So there's gonna be a cap to unlocking these dialogue relationship progressions based on your bond level. And I know it says here that it's checking your chat and greet, but the greet is the first conversation that's gated by bond level. So this number would not be able to be this threshold unless you met the bond level requirement. So if you didn't meet the requirement for unlocking the next conversation, like let's say you didn't have the high enough bond level to unlock the greet number 8, then what will happen is that it will go down to this other set of LFs, where it's going to just check and see what your bond level is at, and then it's going to do a randomized block of dialogue based on that. So it's possible that you can play this game a couple different ways, where maybe you will want to try all the love interests out, or try as many of them out as you can. You won't be able to unlock more than 3 as far as like reading their entire progression, because it takes 10 days to unlock their entire kind of conversation progression. So you wouldn't be able to do that for more than 3 characters per run, but you could get pretty deep into it the more that you maximized your affection gain. Or you could just focus on one character and just completely take your time. And again, you could just explore all the different goofy items that you can give them and see, just to see their reactions and see what type of different kind of randomized dialogue that they could give you about some of the less optimal choices. And in the end, you wouldn't really be able to fail if you... I mean, I guess it would be possible to fail, now that I think about it, if you pursued like one character the entire time and you got the minimum amount of affection gain per interaction. It is possible to like not unlock the dialogue conversations by day 30, but you would have to like not give them anything, not dress them up in anything, not pet them at all, and give them like the most like bad answers during any of your conversations with them. And yeah, then I guess you could get the default bad ending where you don't end up with anybody. I shouldn't call that the bad ending. That's just the solo ending, the I'm good by myself ending. Not necessarily bad. Okay. All right. Well, let me know what your thoughts are on this type of visual novel mechanic of giving the player choice and option and consequence while still making it manageable. Yeah, and that's all I've got for this week. As always, if you're working on something, don't forget to enjoy the process, and talk to you guys next week. Take care. Bye-bye.